Ready for the final chapter of the book, lesson 9.1 on page 623. We're going to deal with jumping into some real algebra today, and that part of algebra that we're going to be looking at is called multiplication properties of exponents. And what we're going to be doing in there is just looking at some different things as far as exponents are concerned, how they relate to each other. And first of all, we're going to look at property number 1 for exponents in green, middle of the page there. But let's just show an example rather than look at that property first of all. And that example 1 says that we're going to take x to the second power and we're going to multiply x to the fourth power. Now, if you remember from the past, when we talked about exponents, we talked about how this 2 here said this is how many times we're going to multiply x by itself. So it's kind of like 2 cubed. That means we're going to multiply 2 by itself 3 times. Okay, same thing with the x. The x squared says that we're going to multiply x by itself twice, times x by itself 4 times. Now, oops, probably should wake up this morning before I put these on here. There we go. X times x is that one. X times x to the fourth is that one. So when we multiply all of these x's together, x times x times x times x times x times x, we have 6 x's. So when we multiply x squared times x to the fourth, we get x to the sixth power. So that brings us to our property. When we are multiplying anything with exponents, we are going to write that as x if our base number is the same, x to the first exponent plus the second exponent, which is going to give me x to the sixth power. So rather than writing this out, adding up all of our 6's, putting them up here, we're just going to say x squared times x to the fourth is the same as 2 plus 4, which is 6. So that's the first property that they're discussing there. Let's go ahead and do another example here. And there's example 2, has 5x cubed times 3x squared. Okay, in the past, if we had a 5x, all right, let's forget this for a minute, times 3, we would get 15x because we would multiply our whole numbers, our coefficients, times each other, and then just drag the x on along with us. When we had 3x plus 2x, we just looked at our whole numbers, added those numbers together, and got 5x. Okay, in this particular one, we've got a variable with an exponent and a coefficient, and a variable with an exponent and coefficient. We're going to bring those two together. And remember, when you multiply, you can pretty much multiply about anything. So it doesn't matter if variables are the same, all that kind of stuff, but it does matter when you combine exponents. So what we're going to do here is we're going to multiply our whole numbers here, our coefficients, and get 15. Then we're going to look at our x cubed and our x squared. Now if you remember just from the last example we did, that is the same as x cubed plus 2. We're taking our 2 exponents and adding them together. And we get 15x to the fifth power. Now it won't be long before you can just do this in your head. 5 times 3 is 15. X cubed times x squared is 3 plus 2 is 5. And you're done there. So 15x to the fifth power. Let's look at example 3. We're going to put a few numbers together here. 4x cubed times 3x to the fourth times 5x squared. Alright, so from our past example we just showed, we multiply our whole numbers together. So we're going to take our 4, our 3, and our 5 and multiply them together and get 60. 4 times 3 is 12, times 5 is 60. Then we're going to look at our variables here, and we're going to put an x there, and we're just going to add our exponents. So we have 60x to the 9th power. And that's it for that particular property. That's where we add the exponents. And just again, Notice there was a multiplication sign right here. If there's a multiplication sign between the variable and the exponent, we add the exponent. Okay? And I emphasize that for a reason. When we come to the next part here, you'll see why I emphasize that. The second property for exponents is in the middle of page 624, property 2. And what we're doing here is we're going to take an x cubed and we're going to square it. Alright, so what we've got here is an x times x times x. That's what x cubed is. And it says we're going to do that twice. So we've got two sets of x times x times x. Okay, this says we're going to do it twice. This says we multiply by itself. Now we look and we have x, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. X to the 6th power. So that tells me that when we have our exponents to a power where there's no sign between them, there's just the parenthesis here. There's going to be a parenthesis all the time there between the exponents. If that's the case, that means x to the 3 times 2. Okay, before, when we had this, we have a time sign between them, and we get x to the 3 plus 2. We take the time sign out, and we put the other end of our parentheses between the two exponents. We multiply our exponents. So those are the two different options that we deal with. We'll get into a third one here in a minute. All right, so let's look at an example here. 2 cubed squared. All right, you've got a couple different options here. You can rewrite this as 2 to the 3 times 2, which is 2 to the 6th power. Oh golly, 2 to the 6th powers is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32, times 2 is 64. Okay, that works. Or you can look at this and cube the 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8. And then square it. 8 times 8 is 64. Both ways are correct. One way, this way, seems to be easier than this way, but sometimes it'll be easier to do it this way. So it just kind of depends on the numbers and what you're trying to find the exponent of. Let's look at one like x to the 5th, and we're going to do that to the 6th power, and we're going to multiply that times x to the 4th, and we're going to put that to the 7th power. All right. So before we do this, we're going to look and say, all right, we got a multiplication sign here, our times sign. We're going to do either side of the times sign first. We're going to simplify both sides of this first, then bring them together. So because, again, you've got your parentheses, do what you can with the parentheses. This is x to the 5 times 6. There's no sign between the 5 and the 6, so we multiply. And this is going to be x to the 28th. Now we have a sign here between these two. So that means x to the 30 plus 28, which gives me x to the 58th power. And we stop at that point. All right, so let's look at the third property. It starts on the bottom of page 624. And we're going to go ahead and shut the video off and start that third property on 9.1b.